Welcome to episode number 50 of Living the Amazing Life podcast. I'm yours truly, Coach Tim Harrell, your motivational leadership expert, as well as your business accelerator. I am so glad to have one of the greatest leaders in Hampton Roads, Pastor Cedric Rouson. Y'all come on, give it up. Come on, give it up for him, Pastor Cedric Rouson. I'm so glad to have you here, man of God. When I sent you a text and asked you, invited you to be on the podcast, and you accepted, I was so elated. I was like, man, I got one of the premier leaders in Hampton Roads. And so, I'm so glad that you had time in your busy schedule to be with us today. I just want you to tell our viewing audience, who is Pastor Cedric Rouson?
First of all, thank you, Coach, for allowing me to be here.
Yes,
I am just a lifelong learner, lover of God and people. I'm a student of leadership.
Okay.
And have a little habit of kind of a musical habit that I've been nurturing for about 30-some years now. Born and raised here, lived in Chesapeake most of my life, blessed to pastor the Place of Change in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Yes.
And I am a PK. My parents pastored for years. My father's now retired. My mother's gone on to be with the Lord. And but they pastored for more than a quarter century. And so I know church, that's kind of been my life. And, but parlaying out of that into leadership space has been a joy as well. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Husband, father of two.
Now, how long you been married?
13 years.
13 years.
Yeah, 13 years.
13. Now, did you meet your wife at church?
Yes, but we didn't come out of the same church.
Right,
we had a mutual friend who introduced us. And in fact, the first time she was in our church service, I didn't even know who she was or that she was there.
Right.
A few weeks later, a buddy of mine introduced us, and it kind of went on from there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. And you mentioned that you're a musician. Now, what particular instrument you play?
So primarily organ and piano.
Okay.
I started at 3 years old and without any lessons. I started playing by ear. And so probably about the time I was 5, I started playing in church and for services and things like that. Feet couldn't reach the pedals, the whole thing. That's the stories they give me. And but so, yeah, I've literally just nurtured that. Now, I do other things. I play a little bit of drums, bass guitar, stuff like that. But my primary instruments are the piano and organ. And
I've heard you play in person, heard you play online. You follow some of the most prolific speakers. Oh, wow. You're a prolific speaker yourself.
Wow,
you are, man. You are. I heard you speak at one of the Mount conference, Issachar conference, and I was just so impressed and so blown away by the word that you delivered. But you also play behind some prolific speakers. Who's some of the speakers you play behind?
I traveled on the road for a while with Bishop Noel Jones, and I played for almost just about anybody who's ever come into town or in some spaces when I'm away. I'm scared to start naming names. E. Dewey Smith and Bishop McKissick and this one and that one. Sat on stage with Bishop Jakes and played with his band and some of everybody, down through the years. It's been a lot, really, if I try to, to think about it. So I've been blessed in that regard.
Wow. Yeah, and you are, man. You're that guy, man. I know that you have some certain musicians where when you got speakers who, were renowned speakers who come in our area, and they specifically ask for certain musicians. Right. They'll come and say, hey, Doc, I'm coming. I'm preaching at your church. Hey, could you get Rouson to play for me?
It's happening.
Right.
Sometimes traveling in the snow to get to church. That's happened a couple times.
Wow. Yeah. So you said you mentioned you're a PK kid. You grew up in the church, and how was that for you, being in the shadows of your mom and dad?
Yeah. So I don't have horror stories. I was blessed to have parents who were pastors, but were parents first.
Okay, great.
And so I empathize and I hear the stories of people who have had opposite experiences. But I was blessed that our parents always prioritized the family. while growing and nurturing a growing church. We were obviously in church all the time.
Right.
And so, I didn't play a whole lot of sports, but that was because of music. That wasn't because I had to be.
Right.
But just growing up in that environment, always kind of around it. Sometimes kind of being in that kitchen cabinet, so to speak, where you get to learn things where you otherwise wouldn't know. Little did I know at the time it would prepare me for leadership. I didn't think as a child that I would pastor.
Wow.
I knew I had an affection for the Word of God, and maybe more than likely would be a preacher. I'm standing up in the mirror preaching as a kid, but I didn't think I'd be a pastor. I thought I would be a recording artist and an attorney.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So you have a passion for
I do
the legal world.
I do, and maybe that's my retirement plan. Right? We never know. We'll go back to law school.
Right. And you young, man.
Right.
You got some few years ahead of you now. I don't have many years ahead of me, but you have some.
Yeah. So I didn't dream to pastor.
Right.
And by the time I realized God was calling me to ministry, my dad at that point was about to take sick, I think, timeline wise. And by the time I stepped into pastoral ministry, my mother had passed away. So it wasn't being groomed for this.
Right. Wasn't a plan like succession plan.
No.
Okay.
Not in that sense.
Right. Wow. So you went ahead and got behind the helm and did your thing.
I did. By the time we start, so what happened was when my mother passed away in 2010, my parents had started the church where we have now. And I was just a minister of music. I'm playing keys. And when she passed away, I saw my father needed help. And I'm just, you know how it is. Yeah. Hey, Pop, anything I can do to help you.
Right.
He had other leaders. And little did I know he would end up appointing me to be his assistant pastor. I did that for a year and a half.
Okay.
And following that, he announced that he was ready to go back into retirement and to kind of step down. And so he recommended me. And this is the interesting story because he set it up as a succession plan. And I want to thank Bishop Kim Brown because he was really instrumental in helping us navigate it. And my one request was, can you allow, for as much as you allow, can the leadership vote?
Okay.
I said, because
That's
what
interesting.
I don't want is to be accused of nepotism.
Right.
Or for it to look like you just stuck your 24, 25 year old son in place to keep the family business going. Wow. And so he agreed to do it. Now, that was kind of him because he didn't have to do that.
Right.
He agreed to do it. The leadership voted, I think unanimously, or just about unanimous vote. They did it. But that vote of confidence from me let me know, okay, they see something in me.
Right. And they have the support. And knowing that they're behind you as their pastor.
Absolutely.
And they accept you as their pastor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that definitely help you with your confidence as far as stepping into that place because it's a heavy responsibility.
Yes. And I inherited a grieving church. And so that was hard.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, they had just lost their founding pastor. My mother passed away a year and a half before. My father is a 7-time stroke survivor.
Wow.
Yep. God has blessed him to live through 7 strokes.
Wow.
And so it was just a lot of grief, and that level of nurturing. I don't think I was prepared for, but the people made it easy. I mean, it was a rough journey,
right?
But God's grace through the people made it easy. And mind you, I just got married 4 months prior, so I've got this new marriage and a new church,
right?
And now I look back on it, don't know how we made that work.
Well, what would be one challenge, I think, when doing that transition for you? What would be one that would stick out?
Sure. So the analogy I give is like giving birth to a 30-pound baby. It's the idea of having to take on more weight than your growth measure would naturally prepare you for.
Wow.
So in other words, I'm a baby husband. I'm a baby pastor.
Wow.
I technically still have a baby church. Church was about 2.5 years old, but the size of the expectation in these areas were for me to be bigger, more mature. So I had to grow up really fast.
Wow.
Really fast.
Wow.
And that's kind of what it taught me. And now I realize perhaps that's for a larger purpose, but that's what I gained.
And you probably had some mentors in your life. Who were some of the mentors in your life?
So, obviously my father. I mentioned Bishop Brown. He's been very
good man,
instrumental. The late Bishop Donnie Graves down from North Carolina. Those are kind of my big 3.
Okay.
Beyond that, there have been some other voices, Dr. John Gunn, some others, who have just kind of been around the path. And then a level of people who I gleaned from, and they didn't even know it.
Right.
Right.
That's good.
But my Motown 3 would be my father. Bishop Brown and Bishop Graves were really instrumental in my early years, and each of them gave me a different piece of something that I needed.
Wow.
1991, Christmas Day, I was getting high all day, drinking, getting high, and hadn't seen my family, hadn't seen my children, and I walked in 7-Eleven, and I ran into this woman. She knew me from work, and she's like, Tim, what are you doing? You haven't been home to see your children, you haven't seen your wife, you out here in the streets doing you need to get yourself together. The Holy Ghost started dealing with me. Now I was really in a state of guilt, and Lady Rose had been saved for about 1 year, and I called her up and I said, hey baby, what's going on? And she said, the first thing came out of her mouth, the Lord told me to let you go. And I sat on the side of the bed, Lord, what am I going to do now? I got on my knees right there in the detox center, and I said, Lord, if you deliver me now, I will never return to me. And God took the gavel, and he not guilty.
And now you just recently, not too long ago, you got your doctorate from Regent University.
Yes, sir.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So we graduated with a doctor of strategic leadership at Regent University.
Great.
I remember going to Regent, trying to figure out whether I was going to do the DSL or whether I was going to do the PhD in org leadership. And I remember talking to Ding Gomez about it, and she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to help people.
Right.
I said, I really want to inspire people and be a practitioner in the leadership field. So she said, well, then I want you to consider the DSL. She said, I think you're on the right path. She said, if you had told me you wanted to research or contribute to the research field, and I would say, PhD, some days I still debate, should I have done what?
Right.
But I wanted to coach, and I wanted to help leaders, empower leaders. And so for me, that journey was strategic because the typical path for preachers would have been to go get a DMin.
Right, exactly.
And as many of my colleagues did, and I just didn't feel led to go that route. I remember the Lord telling me, you're going to go to Regent University, which for me at Virginia Union at the time, I'm like, Lord, that's jumping one extreme to the other.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
He said, you're going to go to Regent,
Right.
and I want you to study leadership. And I didn't understand that because I'm like, okay, I'm a musician and I'm a preacher. I never considered leadership to be my strength.
Right.
Never. And because in my own estimation, I've always just kind of been keeping up with whatever responsibility was ahead of me.
Just managing.
I didn't consider myself being a person charting out a field.
Right.
And what my time at Regent, which I ended up kind of going basically during COVID, so that helped too, honestly, with the workload. What that journey taught me was the other side of what leadership responsibility brings, and not just in the sense of the responsibility, but also the opportunity.
Yeah.
There are people who I can sit in rooms, and even in spaces like this, though you are a fellow clergy, a well-respected one, we can sit and talk leadership and don't have to talk Bible.
Right, exactly.
You get in rooms. And so I learned so much through that experience. I'd never take it back.
Wow.
And it really helped for me to kind of complete the circle, because sometimes it's hard. It's almost like a child TV star. You will always look at a person and see them as the character they played, right? Well, one of the challenges to being, they would have called it, I guess, a child prodigy, coming up in music at such an early age, is people can typecast you by that.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest fears was, how do I reintroduce myself as a leader in a space where people see me, in essence, as a Christian entertainer?
Right.
Oh, he's a musician.
Right.
Oh, yeah, man, tinkle the ivories. And so when I started getting calls to come in,
I like that.
so when I started getting calls to come in and do coaching and do leadership stuff and trainings and this and that, it started blowing my mind. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Because I didn't have to play keyboard.
Right. But I think that you once they hear you, they may see you on the organ, and that's the first time I ever been introduced to you or saw you was on an organ,
Right.
but then I saw you preaching. So that was it.
Wow.
I didn't see you in the organ no more. I'm like, my God.
Wow.
Yeah. So what, I know a lot of pastors, and in particular some of our younger pastors, they feel as though that as long as I come up with a good sermon, if I can get an intro, 3 points, and a conclusion, I'm good. My church gonna grow. I'm gonna be very successful, and all I got to do is show up for Sunday.
Right.
What would you, based on your leadership studies, and now you coaching and doing leadership stuff, and you're a pastor, what would you? Let me rephrase that. Some people. Some pastors feel as though pastoring, all I need to do is pastor.
I get it.
I don't need to lead.
Gotcha.
What would you say to that?
Throw it in the trash. Yeah. I mean, some of the most effective leaders, even in Scripture, were not eloquent speakers.
Right.
And so to put the emphasis or the burden of leadership on your speaking ability can be dangerous. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some great leaders we've seen in history who move the world through their speaking. We get that. But what I'm suggesting is the idea of, let me just come up with a good sermon and somehow that'd be that, or let me just do a couple of pastoral duties. There's a leadership element. And what I've learned is when people don't find leadership in one space, they naturally will gravitate to it in another.
Wow.
And we will wonder, even in pastoral space, why our people may listen to our sermons, but follow in somebody else's footsteps.
Right.
Because they are providing the leadership. And
I've had that. I've had that.
Okay.
I've had even people who've been covered by other leaders, and they came to me and say, "Hey, we're not getting this on our covering.
Right.
Can you help us? Blah blah blah." So I get that.
So so my advice is try to find strength for your weakness. It maybe you didn't come up naturally around good leadership, or read a book. This is 2025.
Right.
Find a coach, get a mentor.
Right.
Find ways to provide strength for your areas of weakness, and then trust other people as well. Get people on your team who are strong where you're weak.
Right.
But you cannot afford in today's world, in any organization, and I know I'm afraid, we're afraid to use that word when it comes to church. We know church is a living organism, but
absolutely.
But it's you still
you still got to
operate. You got to organize.
You got to structure systems.
Absolutely. You can't afford to be absent of leadership, and don't think that inspiration is a substitute for leadership. It's
not. That is so good.
TikTok inspires, but it doesn't mean it's leading you anywhere. Good. So I think we have to find the ways to fill in those gaps, to understand the times, and to learn what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so good. So how much time do you spend training your leaders in-house, your in-house leaders?
So Jonathan Hardy has this quadrant that he uses, laborer, leader, empowerer, multiplier. So I've spent the last maybe year and a half using that as a model, and I'll test in our church with our leadership teams and our those non-paid staff and other leaders. Where do you see me at this season?
Right.
Most of the votes have come back that at this season of ministry, I have shifted or am shifting from leader to empowerer. All right. So obviously the laborer does just that. Right. It's the person who is only done if you do it.
Right.
Leadership, I don't have to explain this to you, but for those who are listening, right? The leader is training the laborers to do it. Well, the empowerer gets the benefit of not just training, but development.
Right.
Inspiring people, motivating people to discover who they are and how to best become their best selves. And then, of course, a multiplier does empowering on a larger scale. I'm entering into, and it feels great to do it, I'm entering into an empowerment season.
That's
and
good.
I feel that so much in my life now, where in our church, as well as in other spaces where I get to lead, the biggest thing I'm doing now, to your question, is I'm empowering. I'm spending a lot of space inspiring people, motivating them, challenging them, using what experiences and gifts I have to try to help stir up other people. And so out of a given year, at least I'm going to say 4 times a year, I'm doing it with our entire team,
right.
All leadership and those who serve in ministry. But in terms of our higher level, leadership, I mean, it's almost become infused into some of everything of what we do.
Oh yeah.
Every moment
Absolutely.
is a little bit of management, a little bit of this, but then there's going to be that inspiration. There's going to be that challenging piece. And I'm learning that's really the most worthy portions of our time together.
Yeah, and you're right, because I figured it out a while back that my coaching, it'll be in my, I'm a teacher on Sunday, so it'll be I'm using coaching methods and things like that, even on Sunday, and I've done where we put the couch, and I brought up one of the partners of the church and coached them on the couch on a Sunday morning,
Right.
And it's just and it goes back to the empowering piece. I think that and from what I like to look at is from a biblical perspective, it's an apostolic thing to empower people.
Right.
That's what the apostles did.
Right.
That they empowered you. The scripture, and this, Ephesians 4 talks about he gave gifts to men, and it was to empower people.
Correct.
And if we're just causing people to be inspired and not empower them, then we do them a disservice.
That's right.
And I was with Dr. Chan. We were in a meeting with him, and he shared the difference between training and development. And he was saying training was you just training a person for the task at hand. Right. Developing a person is you developing them to where they're going.
Correct.
And I think that's the a piece that a lot of leaders miss. We just training people.
I'm gonna tell you, if I may,
go
briefly,
ahead.
why I'm discovering. I think a lot of leaders don't develop while they just train, and some they just don't know the difference.
Right. Absolutely.
But in other cases, I think some leaders are afraid because true development. If I really develop a person well, then I'm developing them for something beyond what I need them for in the moment.
Absolutely.
And the fear is what happens if I develop you for something and I don't get to reap the fruit of it because you take what I gave you and run out and become something great, which is stupid because the goal ought to be for the person to go out and become something great. But I think that so many leaders are afraid that they will give of themselves and get nothing back, or that they will pour out and then be empty, essentially. And I always say to that, then you don't really trust how this thing works.
You really don't. And that is so good. And I believe that too, because, Jesus has the model, I'm in a doctorate program now. Okay. And, but not at Regent. Amen. Praise the Lord. All right. But the dissertation that I'm looking to do, or my thesis I'm looking to do, is in the leadership models of Jesus.
Wow.
Leadership, because it's in a leadership.
I love it.
Yeah. So one of the models that Jesus, that I love, that he was able to produce leaders. One of the greatest attributes of a bona fide true leader, that he can produce other leaders.
Absolutely.
And if you're a leader and you're just focusing on developing followers, you missed it. You done missed it. If you are a leader and you're focusing on developing leaders, then you got it. Right. And Jesus did that. He duplicated himself through his disciples.
Absolutely.
And they were able to go out and do the same thing that he did. Yep. And because he saw a bigger picture. It was bigger. What he was doing was bigger than him. Right. And if we only see, is like what John Maxwell teaches, the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. Law number 1, the law of the lid. Then you can cap your leadership, and those who are following you can't go no further than you.
You can never be an effective leader if your primary goal is to survive. Because survival by nature is selfish.
Right.
If there's only one piece of bread and it's 5 of us. Right. And each of us are trying to survive, the temptation is going to be, let's get in a rat race to see who can get to the bread first. Right. Right? Rather than let's cut off a piece of bread for everybody. A leader who's leading to survive will often become selfish with what they give out.
Wow. Ooh, that's good. That's good.
If I'm just trying to stay in business, if I'm just trying to pay my bills, and this is a lot of times where it hurts small businesses, because somebody have an idea, they go into business, but they're going into business to survive. So then you never reinvest.
No.
You never put back in the pot, so you never multiply.
Right.
Because you took 100% of whatever you brought in to survive.
Right.
One of the first things that I think a leader has to forfeit in order to be successful is survival.
So, man, this has been good, Pastor, man. Come on, y'all, give it up for Pastor Cedric Rouson. Thank you for being a part of the podcast today. And, man, you're living your amazing life. And we're going to continue to track you. We're going to have you back.
Yes, sir.
Because we're going to definitely, when you finish that book,
yes,
we
sir.
want you to come back
and
promote your book on the podcast.
I'd love to.
And so, again, guys, if you haven't had the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, make sure you subscribe and make sure you share this podcast with your family, friends, co-workers, whoever you think this particular episode will be a blessing to them. And you know what time it is. It's time for you to live your amazing life. We'll see you on the next podcast. Hey guys, this is Tim Harrell. Man, this was a phenomenal training. I'm telling you, man, John Maxwell and the team poured into us, and now we're ready to do what we've been equipped to do. I'm excited about my new business, Next Level Coaching and Consulting, and so I'm excited about taking the principles that I learned and to implement those principles into my business. I'm excited. This was phenomenal. The coaching session was great. The leadership and development session was great. And man, this just was exciting. So I'm excited, and I'm so happy that I made the investment in me. And I'm here to encourage you today. If you have not made an investment in your leadership growth, your business growth, your personal development, you need to do that. And if you need help, all you have to do is contact me, Next Level Coaching and Consulting, and you can get the help you need. Also look for the information that will be with this video, and I can help you grow and develop to the person you desire to be. All right, look forward to connecting with you soon. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Despina Marie, and I'm located in Elberton, Georgia. I am a new business owner of Mama D's Nitty Gritty Bowl. I've opened multiple businesses, but mostly business ministry related. So to have the information today for fundamentals of starting a business, a successful business, it was invaluable. I cannot wait to take on Tim Harrell Sr. as my personal business coach. You need to get in touch with this next level leader, business motivational leadership expert. I'm telling you, it'll change your life. Get in this class.